Hey everyone, I think I'm live now. Hey, I am Darcy. I'm the creator of the Vibrant Woman program, and I'm here today for live Q&As with Darcy to talk about something that is foundational to my program and absolutely foundational to your good health in your one human body, and that is carbohydrate intolerance. I'm here to talk to you about how you can discover for yourself your own personal carbohydrate tolerance, what that even means, and why it is so impactful. It's the missing link. So let me just introduce myself for a second first. For folks who might be new around here, I'm Darcy. I am a founding member of MAF Method, certified health coaches and practitioners. By working with very closely with my friend and mentor, Dr. Phil Maffetone, over a couple of decades, I became one of his founding members in this coaching. Oh, sorry, I'm flustered because my computer went down just a minute ago and I had to restart. So, hey, Malcolm, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I am doing a live from my phone today, and I'm feeling a little disoriented because I don't usually do it this way. But let me just take a second to explain my relationship with Dr. Phil Maffetone and why it was such an important transformational piece of my life, and actually put me on the course to what I'm doing now, which is what I call vibrancy coaching. I do health and fitness coaching, mostly for women, for men too, but this piece of hormone balance for women is something that I personally struggled with when I hit my rock bottom burnout. And being able to find my way out of that very deep, dark hole that led to adrenal fatigue, hypothyroidism, it's really a terrible place to be. Burnout is kind of a cute word for really a terrible experience. And I spiraled down there. It had a lot of impact on my mental health, my physical health. And the point is, I was able to work my way step by step from burnout to where I live now, which is a place I call thriving. I'm in the best shape of my life. Every year gets better. Every year I'm happier, fitter, healthier, more satisfied with my life, my body, my relationship to it. So, I'm just lit up with this, and I look around at my peers, a lot of them complaining about aches and pains and niggles, hormone imbalance, lots of stuff going on. And I'm just here to say, folks, that's really not related to your age. It really has nothing to do with how long you've been here. But it absolutely has everything to do with how you have been treating your body and for how long. And that's a really confusing point for a lot of people because we're doing what we think is right, and we're living in a paradigm that is really obsessed with symptoms and symptom targeting and symptom attacking. And the problem with that is if you never get to the root cause, then you never have any hope of really changing anything for long and for good. So that's the foundation. That's where I'm coming from. That's my philosophy, and I'm doing my best to attract the folks for whom that resonates, because it's not everybody. I understand I'm not talking to everybody. There are plenty of people who really do feel more comfortable putting all of their authority in an outside sort of expert's hands and being told by someone else what they should do. A lot of that saviorism, I think, comes from, again, the paradigm. And it comes from some pretty good propaganda that has us believing we could add something into a situation, like a pill, and hope, again, to get a good outcome. And I'm going to always point you deeper and deeper and deeper into that root cause. So one of the things I learned from my coach and mentor, Dr. Phil Maffetone, was the root cause of metabolic disease. Excuse me while I try to stay in front of my phone here. The root cause of metabolic disease is when we are basically out of alignment with the body's most basic natural needs for movement, for nutrition, and for stress reduction. And I would argue that actually those first 2 points go 99% of the way toward removing stress. Those first 2 points, if we're not eating well, and we're eating things that hurt us, and we're either not moving at all or moving in a way that is too intense, that's hurting us. That is the majority of the stress that we experience in our lives. There's other things too. And in my Vibrant Woman program, we definitely go into details on that. Things like toxins, things like sleep, things like, relationships. But if we can handle those first two pieces, we give the body this solid foundation, the tools that it needs to deal with some other stresses, the things we don't have control over, okay? So let me tell you just a little bit about Phil. When I say I'm a founding member of MAF Method coaches and practitioners, that this is a small group, a handful of people that Phil worked with intensely over the years that became so experienced, really just living these principles that he teaches, that we earned this level of certification, hands-on, nose down in the business of it, right? I used these principles to heal my daughter's brain injury. And then when I burned myself out as a single mom working so hard at that intense rehabilitation program, which was Phil's basic methods, but not only that. So let me say that. If you are the parent of a kid who struggles, or a child who struggles neurologically, put them in touch with me, and I will hand over the resources on all of that stuff too. This was definitely a big piece of it, but not all of it. So working on all of that for many years, the stress of single parenting and having a kid with neurological issues, and dealing with the medical system and the education system, I burned out pretty hard. And I used these principles to completely heal myself. So I'm just here to say it's possible without medications, without, a lot of really invasive interventions. I was able to listen to my body, give it what it needed, and find my way back to thriving. So that's what I'm up to. That's what I want to share. The root cause of metabolic disease is something that Phil has written about extensively. He's not the only one writing about it. I do believe he's the first person to coin this term, and this is going to be a really important term for us going forward, because this is a term that labels the root cause. Carbohydrate intolerance. And I want to talk to you for a few minutes today about what that means, the metabolic story of a cell and how it applies here, and then what you can do to find this out for yourself. And hopefully by the time we're finished in about 15 minutes or so, you're going to understand a whole lot more about why your body is doing what it's doing and some of the sources of discomfort, okay? So what I want you to understand is there are three basic forms of the macronutrients. Let's just talk about it that way. So we've got carbohydrates, which are the starches and the sugars. We've got proteins. They come from amino acids. They're the structural building blocks of our bodies. And we've got fats. Now, carbs and fats both can be used for fuel. Proteins can too, and in a roundabout way, they can be turned into glucose and used for fuel. But the main idea here is that if we look at human evolution and we look at the primary basis of metabolism in the body, our human cells were made to burn fat. They evolved to burn fat. We evolved huge brains with these big cortex, the sophisticated cortex, which is responsible for these like human-only functions of reading, writing, walking completely upright. These are functions of the sophisticated cortex, which developed over the years of eating a very high-fat diet. So that is the diet that the brain needs. It actually happens to be the diet that the body needs. And an interesting thing happens when we look at the difference between bodies that are using a fat-burning metabolism versus a body that is using a sugar-burning metabolism, basically. It's an entirely different metabolism, not just in terms of kind of what fuel the cells are gobbling up to get their work done, but in terms of every other function in the body, including oxygenation of tissues and cells, hormone balance. The entire hormone system is built on important fatty acids. It has everything to do with the balance of those hormones, how they relate to stress, how they relate to the load on the adrenal glands, which is one of the players in the HPA axis. So this affects our pituitary gland. It affects our thyroid. It affects our sleep, our cognitive abilities. It affects our memory, our learning, our emotional, well, a lot of people are using words like trauma informed and emotional intelligence, and all of that has everything to do with whether the frontal lobe and these other parts of the brain, if they can be regulated. And so what I'm trying to say is having a fat burning metabolism is the way you were made, and it's what your cells prefer. And we have gotten off track with a modern, mainstream, processed junk food diet. And that's what I'm here to talk about, because a lot of people are confused about what junk food really is, and they're not able to see the connection between the foods they're eating, the metabolism that it creates in the body, the dysfunction that then occurs at the cellular level, and how everything, all the dominoes fall from there. That's the first domino. So instead of starting at the end of the line of dominoes, think about it. If the dominoes fall, you can't start by picking up the last one that fell. It doesn't work that way. So we can't just add a pill to say, well, let's try to get that thyroid function back going. We can't just add a pill and say, well, let's try to regulate some neurotransmitters and improve your mood. We can't just add a pill and say, we want to target what we're seeing building up in your arteries, or what we hear happening with your heart, or what's going on with all of that weight gain. We can't just add a pill and pick up that last domino. It doesn't work that way. We've got to go back to the first one that fell, the thing that caused all of it, and that's your carbohydrate tolerance, or for a lot of us, intolerance. And the point of that is that every human body has a certain amount of carbohydrate that the cells can use for fuel, and then there's an amount that cannot be used. And that's excessive, and it's too much, and that is what causes this entire row of dominoes to fall, starting with, let me just tell you the story then of a cell, a very quick story of a cell, and let you reflect on how this might be impacting what's happening with your body. So basically, for all cells, they need a form of energy. And like I said, they prefer fat. They were created to burn fat. We don't provide them with their fuel of choice. So we provide them with starches and sugars for the most part instead. And don't get me wrong here. I'm not just talking about things that have added white refined sugar. So I'm not just talking about cupcakes and ice cream. Okay, I'm talking about all of the highly processed. These are foods that are pretty much rich in grains. They do have white sugar added, a lot of them, but there are lots of foods that are really abundant in the modern world that turn to sugar, even if they don't taste sweet, even if we don't find them in the sweet aisles. As soon as they are digested and they hit the bloodstream, they turn to sugar. Okay, and this is foods like bread. Doesn't make me very popular. It just makes me a truth teller. Foods like bread, pasta, anything else made with wheat flour. So that's your pizza, it's your sandwiches, it's what else? Pretzels, crackers. And then yes, we do get into the sweet things. Cookies, cakes, even things like chips, potato chips. Potatoes can end up, even though potatoes are a real whole food, and many people will tolerate them, and many people will find that some potatoes fit back into their diet at their level of carbohydrate tolerance. They are a very starchy food. Potatoes, for me, will spike my glucose way more than something, even than some things with wheat flour or grains or the breads. So they're very starchy. They turn to glucose in your bloodstream. So we're talking about the processed starches, and then we're even talking about some of the natural starches, some of the things like legumes and beans. And again, this doesn't make me very popular, but it just makes me a truth teller. Perhaps legumes, beans, lentils, perhaps those things fit under your carbohydrate tolerance. and perhaps they don't. They're not protein dense foods as a lot of people believe they are. They're starches, they're starch dense. Just look at the back of your can of beans and look how many grams of fat, how many grams of carb, and how many grams of protein. And you can see where the bigger number is. So you can see that that's a starch dense food, not a protein dense food. Not that there isn't some plant protein there, but it's not a protein dense food, as opposed to something like a steak, which is mostly protein, right? Okay, so as you can see, this is a passion of mine. I could talk about this all day, every day, and I mostly do. What I want to give you today then is this idea that carbohydrate tolerance is something you need to know about. Your cell needs a form of fuel, prefers fat, it's getting starches and sugars instead. So a lot of you have heard of insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. That really is one of the first steps toward abusing your cells by providing them too much carbohydrate. And so what happens is we eat the food, and if we're talking about these carb-dense, starchy foods, they turn to glucose immediately in the bloodstream. So now there's glucose in the bloodstream. Now a lot of you think, well, that's a good thing, right? Because the cells need glucose. The cells need a little bit of glucose. They prefer fat. Most cells are fat adaptive. There are some brain cells that require the glucose in that form. And the problem is they're not going to get it, because here's what happens. We get this huge dumping load of glucose into the bloodstream because of what we ate. We ate pizza or a sandwich, followed up with cookies and maybe a big Coke with that. So the modern diet is carb overload, and it hits your bloodstream, turns to glucose. The only way for glucose to get into a cell to be used as fuel is if it's carried in by insulin. The job of insulin is to take the glucose into the cell and deliver it, basically. So the glucose comes out, then the pancreas is going to respond by sort of like submitting all of this. Okay, we've got glucose online. We are going to need insulin. Quick, give us some insulin. So we get the rush of insulin. Now, this is where things get a little complicated, and this is where things really go sideways on us, because we need that insulin. Yes, it's like insulin's like every glucose molecule is going to need an insulin molecule to come out and stick it in its backpack, and then the insulin is going to come along and knock on the cell's door and say, hey, we've got a delivery for you. This is something you're going to need. The problem is it ends up being too much insulin. All of the insulin that's required to get all the glucose in their backpacks is way more than the cells can tolerate. So eventually we end up insulin resistant. The cells say, well, nope, we don't have room for you anymore in here. And we've seen too many of you today. You know how it is. If UPS brings you a package, you get really excited. If they're there every 5 or 10 minutes, you're over it, right? So the insulin can't get in. Therefore, the glucose can't get in. Therefore, the cells now are starving for energy. But now we've got two problems. We've got a cell with no energy, and we've got circulating high insulin. Insulin is still doing its other jobs. Now, insulin has some good jobs. Fat storage, for one. We're going to store that glucose is going to get turned into fat and stored in the body. Now, if you were alive 35,000 years ago and it was going to be a long winter between meals, that is a really important adaptation. Turns out it's not serving us very well in the modern world when you're at the McDonald's drive-up twice a day, because we're never, and the way that we move. This is why these two pieces are so important. We need to move in a way that burns fat. We need to eat in a way that provides that fat. But we've got too much glucose being turned to fat, being stored as fat, and we are not moving in a way that burns fat. We're moving in a way that burns more sugar, and your cells can't let it in. So the cell is starving for energy, which sends out signals that we translate as hunger, as cravings, more cravings for more sugar. You want pizza, you have midnight snack attacks, you're headed for the freezer and that pint of ice cream. Your cells are asking you for fuel. It's just that we've got the signal mixed up. We're not hearing their cry for fuel and providing something that is a good, clean, efficient fuel source like fat, the fat found in olives and avocados and eggs. We're providing more sugar, which can't get in, which leaves them calling for more. And we're misinterpreting the signal again. And most of us are on this terrible blood sugar instability roller coaster And then we head toward metabolic disease, because while all of this is happening, the body is doing its best to adapt to glucose is a toxin, number one. Insulin in high amounts creates all kinds of these dominoes falling, including hormone imbalance, which will lead to, for me, it led to the adrenal burnout and fatigue, which disrupted the hormones needed for my thyroid. So, this is really this downward spiral, this cascade. So that's what we have. Hey, Mac, good to see you. All right, so let me just recap for a minute. We have cells evolutionarily programmed to burn fat, and we are in a modern world that's things that look normal just are not normal in terms of the human body and what it's been asking for. So we're not providing the right fuel. We are providing sugars instead. Hey, Myrna, good to see you. And we therefore get really out of whack. Now, what I've been saying, carbohydrate tolerance, carbohydrate intolerance, what does that have to do with all of this? Well, what I'm describing there, that sad story of the cell, the one where the cell ends up starved and there's excess glucose acting as a toxin in the bloodstream, and excess insulin, which now is doing all of its jobs in abundance, storing all that glucose as fat. So it gets stored as fat in a couple different places. And this is one of the signs of carbohydrate intolerance that I want you to watch for. Fat around the middle, that's prime real estate right there. Let's just store it right there in our abdomen among all of our organs, and then that'll get packed up and we'll see the abdomen extend, right? So this is, when we talk about symptoms of carbohydrate intolerance, one of the quickest, easiest things you can do to say, well, could this maybe be me? Measure your waist. Just measure your waist and measure your height. And that ratio, your waist should be half of your height or less. And if it's more than that, you're storing enough fat there through this process that I just described that shows you're at risk. You're probably carbohydrate intolerant. Okay? The other place we store fat that's prime real estate is the cheeks. A lot of people who have carbohydrate intolerance have kind of puffy chipmunk cheeks or, really puffy faces. It's one of the first signs. It's one of the first places that the body will burn from when we get into a fat burning metabolism. We love to see the face lean down. People who didn't realize they had dimples end up with some dimples. We begin to see cheekbones again. We begin to see eye sockets again. This is one of the first places the body will pull fat from to burn it. Abdomen as well. And so here's the thing. I'm not here to say whether anyone is fat or too fat or there's something wrong with being fat. We're not here to shame anyone for being fat. We want to respect and love every human of every body type. What I hear in my work, what I learned from working with Phil so closely over the years and his impact on, this industry, not just, what we want to call like functional medicine, functional health, but also fitness and athletics and mental and emotional health. Like all of these fields overlap when it comes to this issue because of the impact of all of these cascading dominoes and they're, so basically what happens then? These diseases that we see, these are simply adaptations that the body is making to try to survive and thrive in this toxic situation. So, again, you can't solve the problem by picking up that last domino. You can't just look at, I want to lose some weight. You can't just look at, well, my moods are low. You can't just look at, my thyroid is a little low. Like we can't just try to pick up that last domino. We really need to go back and find the root cause. Because all of that, your weight gain, your emotional and mental clarity, your ability to learn, remember, for children, this has tremendous impact. This was the place where I learned this. My daughter's ability to read, write, remember, become a successful student had everything to do with carbohydrate tolerance. So what I'm talking about then, as we have to discover what amount of carbohydrate the cells of our body, everybody's got a different human body, And carbohydrate tolerance, the amount of carb that brings out the right amount of insulin that the cells will let in and be able to metabolize and use as fuel, that's the right amount of carbohydrate for you. More than that is this sad story I've been telling, where it's too much and it circulates as a toxin, gets stored as excess fat, knocks off your hormone balance, interrupts. Here's the problem. The cells that starve for fuel, when I talked about that glucose can't get into the cell and it's stored as fat instead, and those cells cry for energy, and that translates as cravings to us. The cells that are the most negatively impacted are brain cells. They're neurons. Some of them are fat adaptive, some of them are not. And what that means is without that rush of glucose, some of those cells can turn to the environment and pull some fat to function just fine. Some of them cannot. So there are cells in the brain that have to have that glucose. And what I just described, they're not getting it either. They're not getting it either. So the brain cannot function. This is the 3:30 meltdown that we see in elementary school children. I mean, we're not going to go all down this rabbit hole today, but do we think this has something to do with people who do not have the skills to discuss and handle their emotions and pick up a gun instead? Like, if we don't think this has everything to do with shootings and car accidents and relationship issues and all of the things that are happening that we see in our world, it does. It does. I want to invite you to think about that. Everybody is either sugared up, and I don't know about you, but if the last time I had a chocolate bar, and I eat them not very often, and I don't eat them very much, not very much of them, there's just enough sugar in that, and I am just so long and so well fat adapted that I really notice. It gives me a bit of a rush, and a sugar high does not feel good to me anymore. The point is, we're all either sugared up or we're at sugar lows, and I don't know how we can expect anything good to come from such a dysfunctional metabolic state that impacts the brain so profoundly. That's my personal experience. So this is really important, people. It's important. It's important for your own health. It's important for your child's health. It's important for your family. That is one of the reasons I am so passionate about working with women. With few exceptions, women are making the world go round. We're raising kids. We're feeding people. We are caring for communities. Number one, we have to be in the very best shape for ourselves to hold all of that together. Number two, we have the power to influence others. We're doing the grocery shopping. At the very least, we're making the shopping list. And we're teaching people, we're teaching our families how to do this. So that's where I come in. And I'm really passionate about teaching women about this because it impacts more than just that one woman. It impacts her family. It impacts her community. And ultimately, at the end of the day, this impacts our world. I want you to think about not just your own personal carbohydrate tolerance and what you're putting in your body and what you're asking your cells to deal with on a moment-by-moment basis. We're asking them to deal with scramble to get the insulin out, scramble to get that glucose taken care of, scramble to quick make fat, convert it to fat, store it to fat. And how does that feel? How does that feel? I'm not here to fat shame anyone. I'm here to ask you, how do you feel in your body? And if you're not feeling great, then you have the power to make some changes. Most of you don't know what to do. That's why Phil's work is so important. He's the one that coined this term, carbohydrate intolerance. And I share it all the time. If you'd like to have it, if you can't find it, if you'd like an extra share, please put your hand up, come into my DMs. There's a really beautiful white paper, a peer-reviewed journal article that he has written not that long ago that I think is the most clearly articulate explanation of this I've ever seen. So happy to keep circulating that so that people can really see that carbohydrate intolerance in your one human body starts out as subtle symptoms like feeling sleepy after meals. And that is because that's the stage where the insulin came out and took all the glucose down. And now your cells, they got a rush, and then they're starving for fuel. What happens when you eat fat instead? when you are fat adapted, let me say. It's not just a matter of eating fat sometimes. And we're fat phobic. There's a whole bunch of bad science out there that taught us to be fat phobic, and I'm here to unravel those myths as well. So hang around and we'll unravel those together. I'm happy to point out books and resources, places where I've learned all this so that you can really beef up your own understanding. I think there really is something to be said for a scientific understanding of what's happening here. But what I teach at the core of it is, I think what's more impactful and more transformational is to live it in your body. So what I teach is a simple method that I learned from Phil. It's a 2-week test. Some of us need more than 2 weeks, just say that right up front, to discover your body's own personal carbohydrate tolerance. Because once we experience what our metabolism can do when it's not hitting the sugar highs and then the flood of insulin, so we get the sugar lows, when we shift into a more efficient, a more peaceful, and a more natural metabolism where the cells are burning fat primarily for fuel, and there's an abundance of fat, even on the leanest of us, there is an abundance of fat that can be burned. We can definitely then provide that through improvements in our diet that incorporate the right kind of fats. You just don't even know how beautiful and peaceful and creative and fabulous you can feel in your human body when it's getting everything that it needs. It's remarkable. The drama goes away because the cellular drama goes away. The brain gets everything it needs. Everything becomes simple and easy, and it's incredible. So that was my experience. It's the experience of all the people I've worked with. It's the experience Phil writes and talks about all the time. This has been his life's work. And I feel really blessed and lucky to have met him, to have learned from him, and to be a part of this movement of bringing this topic to the forefront, because what we don't see enough of is treating root causes. And that's why we see the ineffective outcomes that we see, right? I'm telling you, the recipes on the American Diabetes Association website are way over my carbohydrate tolerance. So there's that. But I'm also not benefiting from the profits of the sale of Jell-O and Kraft foods. So we're not going to go down that rabbit hole today either, but I invite you to just do a little research and find out how many different giant corporations own 99% of the boxed foods on the shelves, and decide what's in them and decide what they're going to do with their profits and who that benefits. People, land, environment. Who are they serving? It's not your health. Okay, so I want to wrap it up by saying this. Learning your own body's personal carbohydrate tolerance has a profound effect on your health, on how you feel, on how much you weigh, on how your pants fit, on how you feel and about yourself, about how you think, about how you sleep at night, about your hormone balance, all of that. The way to find that out is through a simple 2-week test. We have to lower the amount of carbohydrate below your body's personal tolerance level. And let me just say this, for a lot of people who are concerned, there is no essential saccharide. There's no essential carbs. There's no essential polysaccharides. There's no essential starches. You have essential fatty acids, things you must bring in to your body. Your body cannot get them anywhere but from in the diet. There are essential amino acids, the proteins, that you must take in through your diet. There are no essential carbohydrates. So that doesn't mean you're gonna, so when people get a little worried about this, like, oh, if I don't have enough carbs. Well, there's no such thing as that, number one. And number two, there are plenty of carbs and glucose that come in through lower carb foods. And this is what I teach. So no reason to worry. It's a simple and easy test. It's not always comfortable. Changing gears from a sugar-burning metabolism to a fat-burning one. Some of us have cells that complain a little bit for a couple of days in the meantime. Some of us hit a few bumps. That's why I highly recommend getting coaching. That's what I'm here to tell you about then, is that I offer this service. I walk people through this journey hand by hand, and holding your hand and making sure that you understand. So sometimes we just need a translator, don't we? Sometimes when we're learning a new language or we're listening in and we want to understand something, sometimes we just need somebody who has a little more expertise, who can help us understand. Because I am not a go-between between you and your body. That communication between you and your body, so for example, a headache is communication. A craving for salty snacks is a communication. A craving for ice cream is a communication. There are lots of ways that our bodies are trying to tell us what they need. And sometimes in the beginning, we can get a little bit confused about that, only because we just don't have the experience here yet. So that's where I come in. I help people realize that that craving is a calling for sugar. That's because the cells have not yet decided to switch to a fat-burning metabolism. When we lower the carbs during the 2-week carb test that it takes to determine your own personal carbohydrate tolerance, some of your cells are gonna tantrum. They're gonna say, but that's not what I'm used to. And I want what I'm used to because it's too hard to change. And we're gonna talk about it. And we're gonna tell those cells, I know that's not what you're used to, but sweetheart, this is what's better for you. And honestly, I really think in a couple of days, you're going to figure out how to make this work. And of course they will. They are programmed with a genetic code for fat burning. And once they burn through, once you're not giving them enough carbohydrate to keep them happy, which wasn't happy at all, was it? It was a blood sugar roller coaster of instability, of highs and lows and moodiness and cravings and headaches and tiredness and fatigue and lethargy and bad sleep and hormone imbalance and menstrual cramps and, all of it. The symptom list is long. And again, I'll post that article and I invite you to go through that list of symptoms of carbohydrate intolerance and just see how many of those you have. Even if you check 1 or 2 of them, it is absolutely important that you then go through this test and find out what your carb tolerance is. So once you do that, your cells, some of them, depending on how carb dependent you have become and some of the other things in your situation, how much stress you're under, some of that stuff, you're going to, your cells are going to make a decision. They're going to say, we prefer to burn sugar just because that's what we're used to. They're going to look for all the sugar. They're going to send you cravings for sugar to try to get what they want. Think about it. It's like a 2-year-old when a 2-year-old tantrums. You just have to wait them out. Okay, you just have to be reasonable and wait them out. Then they're going to go searching for sugar because it's what they're used to. They'll go through all your glycogen stores in your muscles and in your liver, and they'll convert all of that stuff back into glucose, and they'll burn all of that too. And then they're going to say, well, shoot, I guess there's just no sugar around here to burn. I guess we'll just dig out the darn code for how to burn fat and we'll shift over to a fat burning metabolism. And people, once that happens, once you feel the relief of that low level of insulin all the time, once you feel your body slimming down, so the first thing that'll happen is you're going to dump a bunch of water out of your system, you're going to get some mental clarity, you're going to get a good night's sleep, you're going to feel lighter. Once you have a taste of that and you can see, wow, this is what my body was born to be like. This is what I was made to be like. And I've just been covering it up by eating too many carbs because that's what the people who loved me and raised me and didn't know any better fed me. And then that's what I learned to feed myself. And it's on every TV commercial. And you're going to learn to listen to your body's cues more than you learn to the marketers. And once you do that, I'm telling you, it doesn't mean you're scot-free forever. You have to continue to live this relationship and stay under your carb tolerance. And I hit a bunch of bumps myself in the first few years really doing it, sorting it out, which is what makes me a great coach for other people because I've been there. Been through the headaches, and I've been through the slim down and the honeymoon period of it. I've been through the fall off the wagon of it. And every step along that way, I learned something, the same that you will. This is all about a deeper intimacy and a deeper love and respect between you and the cells of your body. Okay? So what I really want you to know then is that carbohydrate intolerance is the root cause of so many of the troubles that we're seeing, that you're experiencing in your body. learning what your own personal carbohydrate tolerance is the solution. And here's what makes this program different. This is not low carb. I mean, maybe it is, but isn't it all relative? It's 99% sure it's lower carb than what you are used to, probably, for most of us. But I don't get to decide. You know, this is the problem that we have seen with things like Atkins, with paleo, with Whole30, with the keto movement. And I tell you, there's a lot of stuff, #keto, that is absolute terrible junk for your body. Don't eat it. It's not real food. Okay, so we're not doing this as a biohack, as a trick, as a quick fix for something to slim down, to win a race. We're doing this as an ongoing, loving, solid, foundational relationship with your body. It's asking for what it needs, and we just have to learn how to listen. So finding out your personal carb tolerance that's what that is. And that's what I'm teaching, and that's what I'm advocating for. That's what I'm educating people about. There's so many little things that go wrong with our body that we have the power to change, because that little thing going wrong is simply a symptom. It's the body asking for what it needs. It's the body adapting to this terrible blood sugar roller coaster we've got it on. Okay, and you can eliminate that symptom by simply pulling up the root. And then the symptom goes away. So that was a lot. And I see a bunch of you here watching, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. If you're watching this on replay and you're not present to ask a live question, I want you to realize that I'm always available. I always welcome people into my email, into my DMs. There's a link through my website where you can set up a free 30-minute chat. And much to my business coach's dismay, it's really not, it's not a sales call. It's really just a way for me to answer some of your questions, help you see the connections between, how we're moving, what we're eating, and how that's manifesting in your body. And then, yes, if that's something you want to learn more about and you really want to fix those problems by looking at the root, then yeah, I invite people into my private coaching package. I also offer a course once a year. But listen, the main idea today is this carb tolerance. I want you to learn more about it. I want you to start paying attention to what you eat and how you feel. I want you to take a look at those list of symptoms and see how many of them you have. The more, obviously, the more at risk you are for this, and the more you will see the improvements when you dial in your personal carb tolerance. And like I said, this program is about your personal carb tolerance. So is it high carb? Is it low carb? Well, so the problem is, when Atkins came out and started talking about this, I think he was advocating for something like maybe, he had different phases. And he said, okay, in phase 1, you can only have 30 grams. And then in phase 2, you can raise it to 50 grams. And then, and so the problem with somebody else prescribing the number of grams of carbohydrate for you is that, number one, let me just say, there was a lot of good that came from that. And he was the first one to start talking about it, and it's really important. But the shift from low carb as a philosophy, as a treatment method, to carbohydrate intolerance and an understanding of that is this really the key to personalization. Because for somebody like me who has a very low carbohydrate tolerance, that 30 grams wasn't low enough. And so my body never had to shift into fat burning. And so I didn't see the results that I could have seen had I learned a slightly different trial method for this, the one that I'm teaching now, the one that Phil pioneered and that I've even tweaked further to make this work for women's bodies, because our hormones have a lot to do with this. Our carbohydrate tolerance will change depending on stress, which is sleep and toxins and relationships, all of that stuff, and hormones. So when estrogen is at a high, we have a different carbohydrate tolerance than when progesterone should be at a high. And furthermore, the carbs we eat, the amount of insulin released, that will affect that hormone, that delicate symphony of hormone balance, really. So your carbohydrate tolerance will also change depending on your genetic background, on your fitness level. So metabolically active muscle has a lot to do with this. So it's a moving target in some ways, and I'm just saying that as not to scare you or to make this seem harder than it needs to be, But to understand that, so when Atkins came around or the paleo people came around, see, paleo had huge benefits for a lot of people. It got them off the processed crap and into real food. For a lot of people, that automatically meant way lower carb. But then a lot of people are going to jack up their carb, the cry from those cells for carbs by eating a lot of sweet potatoes because those are paleo approved. Well, so here's the new question. Not, is it Whole30 approved or paleo approved, or is it keto? Is it Atkins? Is it within your personal carbohydrate tolerance? Do you tolerate that food in general and that amount of carbohydrate? And the way to know is to give it a try. So, and now I want to hear from you. I see a bunch of you there, and Myrna, I'm trying to read, doing this on my phone today, so bear with me. I am trying to make sure I can see your questions. I just want to read what Myrna's saying to us. I haven't had the low emotional moments since I changed my food choices, right? I'm so happy for you too. And I am so inspired by you and your willingness to make these changes, even among, some of us are in the context of families who aren't ready to change yet either. And that is tough. And it's really important that we do this for ourselves, get ourselves feeling better, and then in a subtle way, in an impactful way, we can begin to help transform their health as well. Just because maybe I don't make the bread anymore. I don't make the sweet treats anymore. If somebody wants that, they can bring it to the dinner party. I'm not leaving anybody out. I'm not mocking anybody or shaming anybody else's food choices. I'm just living my thriving life the way I live, and I don't eat that. No, thank you. I pass. And Myrna says your symptoms have disappeared. Your symptoms have disappeared because the symptoms were an adaptation to an environment that wasn't working for you. The symptoms were getting your attention to say, hey, this doesn't work for me. You address the root cause. Your symptoms don't need to get your attention anymore. They don't need to be there. Those symptoms are signs of our carbohydrate intolerance. And when we live down into our tolerance, when those cells are getting everything that they need and nothing that they don't, and they don't have to deal with all this high-low blood sugar drama anymore, then you don't need to be notified of the high-low blood sugar drama anymore through your symptoms, through your headaches, late afternoon grouchiness, evening, night. A lot of people who eat at night and these sugar cravings have carb intolerance, right? So Myrna, I am so happy for you. I'm so happy we found each other, and I am so happy. Folks, this program, I'm so passionate about this. This program works. It works for everyone because it addresses the root cause. Now, not everybody's going to come out of it with the same number of carbs that they tolerate. During the same, the other thing that impacts our carbohydrate tolerance is the seasons, the weather. And whether we're getting enough vitamin D3 through sunlight exposure, whether we are getting enough. So it has a lot to do with our gut biome and probiotics. And some of that comes not just through the foods that we eat, but also through exchange of, so it's not just O2 for CO2 when we're outside exercising in nature. There's a lot of things that happen there, both with the ionic exchange and with the probiotics, the beneficial bacteria that are in the environment and how they enter our body and set up home. Did you know that like 3 pounds of your body weight is not human? It's beneficial bacteria, and they have everything to do with creating our neurotransmitters, and they become out of balance. They are crowded out by bad bacteria and yeast when we eat above our carbohydrate tolerance. So there are so many layers to this. And the main idea then is you need to know. And the way you find out is by doing this 2-week test. I'm happy to share the resources for folks to figure it out on their own. I actually sell a mini coaching package where that's all that we do for about a month. I teach you how to do it. We go through the 2-week test together, and then I help you learn how to reorient after the 2-week test with what it has told you about yourself and how to kind of carry on. It's also foundational. It's really the first big chunk of coaching that I do with my private coaching clients. And I have designed this coaching package to be very efficient by making it actually a longer commitment, I offer a 5-month coaching package now based on my rave reviewed Vibrant Woman course, which is only available once a year because it's a lot of energy. I put my whole heart and soul and all my time and energy into coaching a cohort of women going through the program. We go pretty quickly with that. Stay tuned if that's interesting to you, because it will be coming up again soon. Usually we offer it in January. So by the end of the year, you'll be hearing little bits about that to go through with a group of women, which can be very important. But the other thing that's missing there that some women really need is a way to slow it down, to spread it out, to digest piece by piece by piece the foundations of this, and to be able to have that one-on-one support for implementing it, because knowing about something is not the same as using it in your own life and using it in the context of your life. This is one of the things I see with a lot of athletes. They want to learn about this and it makes sense to them, and then they get out and a lot of the really high level athletes that I end up working with are women who are pretty used to overtraining, and they are used to feeling a little bit of pain, and they think that's the way it should be. And so they tend not to be as attentive to the signs and signals of carbohydrate intolerance and the relief that can come when we sort of sort all that out and get them under their tolerance. So I work with everyone from athletes down to, women who really have never been interested in their health or fitness and are just coming online, everybody in between. And this idea of finding your own personal carbohydrate tolerance applies to absolutely every single one of you, everyone. So if you don't already know this, I want to encourage you wholeheartedly to find out. I want to encourage you wholeheartedly to give it a try, to pay attention to the foods you put into your body and how your body feels. It's absolutely connected. A lot of us are just used to it. We just think it's normal to eat this way and it's normal to feel this way. And then it's normal to pop a pill to try to mask those symptoms. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And it doesn't mean you have to settle for living a life that way. You were born to thrive and you deserve it. So if you're ready, I actually have a space for 1, 2. I would be happy to take 2 people. I would make room for 2 people. I want to teach this to everyone. That's why I'm showing up here every week talking about this, hoping that the folks who are ready are going to resonate and find me and we'll find each other. That's how transformative it's been in my own life. So wholehearted gratitude to my coach and mentor, Dr. Phil Maffetone. Phil, wherever you are out there, thank you so much for your work, for teaching me and for being so patient with me as I made my own mistakes with this and learned to get the words right on it so I could teach it to other people. Thanks for keeping me close in your community and making me a founding member of your coaches. I mean, it's an honor. It's a real honor. Thanks to all of you out there who are watching and listening. Thanks to those of you who have, like Myrna, who have tried this and are reaping the benefits of it in your own life and gradually and gently teaching it then to the people in your spheres of influence, helping to make our families and our partners and our communities healthier as well. I'm telling you, we need to wake up from this terrible system that we've got going. We need to wake up from it. And we do that one at a time, and then we lift each other up too, right? So thank you to everybody who's watching. Thanks to those of you who think, wow, I actually have a friend, I actually know somebody who I think would really resonate with this, who probably this might be the missing piece they're looking for. Please share this work. And I would really appreciate getting in front of the folks who really need it the most and who are ready for it. All right. Well, that was a lot. And I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for being here. And I can't wait to see you soon. If you want to learn more, come into my DMs. We'll talk about setting up a call. I can either point you to the carbohydrate tolerance package and teach you just how to do that. I can tell you more about my Vibrant Woman coaching package, the 5-month version, which is a longer experience, a more powerful and transformative and supportive experience. And one that I think you really would appreciate because it starts with nutrition. This is the beginning. But the blood sugar instability that we're talking about is a huge source of stress for the body. It's just not the only one. After we get your carbs dialed in, we really do need to look at the other macros. We need to make sure you're getting enough protein. We need to make sure that you're eating a right amount of fat, that your fats have the right balance. The poly unsaturated to the mono unsaturated to the omega-3s and omega-6s. Like, we need to eat more fat, but we kind of need to tweak that. We need to make sure you're eating the right kind of fat, the right balance. We need to look at the way you're moving. We need to make sure that you're not overtraining, that the no pain, no gain myth bullshit hasn't helped you destroy your own adrenals and caused you more stress, which will lower your carbohydrate tolerance, right? So we need to look at how you're moving. We need to look at how you're sleeping. We need to take a look at the toxins in your food and water that you have control of. We need to look at the toxins you don't have control of and how you can avoid them the best of your ability. And we need to look at intuition, because that word means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But the main idea is that you can always discern what's right for you through listening to your intuition. And that for a lot of us, that comes right directly through the body. And it definitely, it's something you never leave home without. Like, even if you forget your purse and your keys, your intuition is there with you all the time. It helps you find the right experts you might need to partner with. It helps you to discern if those experts are offering something that's helpful for you or not, including me. Whatever I advise people to do, at the end of the day, it ends with and check in with yourself, because you know what's right for you. And some of us like, well, I do, but how do I know? And so we talk about intuition. And so if that's something you're ready for, come and find me and let's talk about my coaching package. And otherwise, think about the carbs you're eating. Think about if that food also has nutrients available to you. Think about how you're feeling and do your best to make that connection. All right. It has been a pleasure to be with you today, everybody. That's all for now. I will see you next week for live Q&A Wednesdays with Darcy at 2 p.m. And if you don't already, find me on YouTube and subscribe there. Follow me on socials on Instagram and Facebook. I put out content every week that hopefully helps you keep going on this path toward the best relationship you can have with your one human body. All right. I love you all. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.